All right, boys and girls, welcome back to another quick installment of Julian's Random Projects. I wanted to invite you to the messy desk while I'm putting together a couple of Meshtastic nodes. All the cool kids are doing it these days, and I thought, why not let you guys, come along with this stream of consciousness? We'll try and make it quick. I wanted to highlight two things. One, that these exist and have for a couple of years now, but they've just recently got a bit of traction. I don't know if it's YouTube or social media or, quote unquote preppers learning that you can text message off grid, encrypted. It's one of those cases where, like, you knew a song existed, you listened to it for years, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's on a TikTok and it gets a bunch of, gets some traction, and next thing you start hearing it all over the place. So I wanted to introduce you guys to this, if you haven't already seen it, and also highlight a 3D printable case that I found very helpful. I was using the plastic case that comes with it, which is awesome. I think that that's another reason this might have gotten some legs. If you've got just the raw board. All right, so if you're playing along at home, and of course links will be down in the description for shilling purposes. If you got one of these, and this is how it's going to come. The antenna won't be connected. I connect all of the antennas as soon as I get them, in case I end up handing this off to somebody else to play along at home. And the reason I do that is the moment this thing powers up, it's immediately going to start transmitting and looking for nodes if it's flashed with Meshtastic firmware. Like with other radios, if there's not a match, like a 50 ohm match for the transmitter, some of that will be reflected back into it. And I know it's only 100 milliwatts, but there's been reports of people popping these right out of the gate. Now they might be complaining that, like, oh, after I got it all set up, I'm not connecting any nodes, or only nodes that are really close to me, and that kind of a thing. And it's most likely that they're popping the actual transceiver that's in here. So I connect the antenna before I ever power it up, and I don't have to worry about it. Asking the factory to do that is like a bit much, but if you catch this, do this before, that might be the title is, do this before you ever power up your LoRa, your Meshtastic device. So if the board was just this raw board, I don't think that folks would have been messing around with this much. Some people might not have even connected the antenna. Other folks would have just looked at this and had a battery dangling from it and been like, I don't know what to do here. But it was very, very smart of Heltec to include a injection molded case that fits perfectly for this thing. And it allows a little spot for the window. It has some marketing on it, genius, so that people can go back to the website and find out more information. This hole here both allows as a loop for the excess antenna length, this guy here, to loop around and reduce the strain on it so that folks aren't like bending it and twisting it to get it to connect. And it also doubles as a lanyard hook spot. I've seen people run a bit of 550 cord through that loop and then have it dangling off their keychain. So there's some design that actually went into this, which is awesome. So if you want to have a bigger battery, of course you can always just hot glue or rubber band a bigger battery to it. But when you start to exceed the width of the height of the package that's here, your battery's gonna start sticking up and get messed with, and you want to protect it somewhat. And Chris over at IKB 3D, I'll interstitch in here like a screenshot from either Instagram or his website. He's a 3D modeler. He's done figurines and characters and what looks like basically puppetry, but with 3Ds. I think as a side thing, got involved in these and thought there ought to be a better case. And boy howdy, I think he nailed it. So I'm going to go through briefly putting together one of the kits that he has. He has a couple different versions of this model, and you can buy them from him. There might be some issues getting it into the States. I know I had some issues just paying for the 3D files, and Chris was awesome and got me squared away and went way above and beyond, stuff that normal business owners wouldn't necessarily mess with. He was super helpful and got me squared away. So he has a model where the antenna comes out the top, like this one, and he has another one where it would be jetting out of the side. And some people prefer that because they intend to stand this up or slide it into a pocket like that. And so you'd want the antenna sticking up this way. Or they, for some reason, like to have one of the 90-degree type antennas. Well, that's not one. They'll have one of these, and I think it's nifty to have it come out and then do the old 90-degree out the side. It's just, it's 6 one way, half a dozen the other. You just kind of pick your poison here when it comes to this stuff. So the I think one of the killer things that he did was he set the dimensions so that it would accept one of these cheapest chips. Like, I think these literally were pretty close to 10 or like 20 cents a piece from the usual suspects. Again, more shill links down in the description. And it is dead nuts on it. Slides right in and has like a positive sort of, sync. You got to give it just the tiniest push and it's locked in there. And then I went ahead and on some other one, as we're building this, we come in here and give it a little dab of hot glue just to help hold it down in the corners here like that. And like that. Not a lot, just a little. And then you're going to thread your coax dongle something like this guy. You take off your nut. You won't need this locking washer, not the split washer, I should say, the one that's got one cut in it. You're not going to need that. But I will keep this other one in play and use it as sort of a washer with the grippy side down. So it would look like this. Come in here. Shove that guy up into place. Brand new 3D print, so it's a little stiff. Little, some of these wispy hairs in here for the printer settings I've got right now don't affect the final product, but sometimes they'll be in that. He's 3D printed in a receptacle for the hex nut there, so that slits right in there, and that keeps it from spinning as you put on the washer. Again, we're doing that grippy bit down, smooth side up. And Chris, trying to think of everything, also has a tool that you can 3D print a hex tool that fits this size nut. I haven't had a chance to print that, but it's very, very cool that he's thinking of folks that maybe don't have tools or maybe doing this for the first time, or maybe a class that's doing this, like a high school or a college course. Because there's some really cool programming that you can do. There's some open source, or all of it's open source, but except maybe the board. I don't think that the board itself, I don't think that the raw board from Heltech is open source, but a lot of the documentation has been published, for the different chipsets, and also the firmware that's running on here is open source. Not the firmware that comes from the factory, but the firmware that you can easily flash going to Meshtastic, its website, and that's all open source. It also, you can tweak some things as an aside here before we go on to building it. It has all these numbered little eyelets down here. Some are kind of self-explanatory if you mess with computers. There's RX and TX for receive and transmit. There's a reset one. There's a 5-volt in if you're going to run this thing off of a solar panel or something like that directly. There's been some experimentation recently with just running this off of a solar panel so that you could leave it up somewhere for 10 years and you wouldn't be worried about the battery going bad, provided that all the other things still work and get water inside your enclosure and that kind of thing. One of the things that I'm planning on playing with, and I don't quote me on this, but I think is possible because I've seen other people twiddle or turn on these different GPIOs, which is a general purpose input and output. In the software, you can just determine whether or not this is an input, meaning data is coming in from a sensor maybe, or it's output with either data or setting it high or low. And if you can set a pin to be plus 3 volts or 0, that means that it can drive a relay. And once you're in the realm of driving little relays, you can then control light bulbs and motors and switches and actuators, all sorts of stuff. And so my plan with this is to enable the ability to check whether or not a gate at the edge of my property is closed and latched or not, whether there's motion at that gate. There's a number of like Arduino kind of projects or if there's a Venn diagram of this and those projects, there's a lot of overlap, and I'm planning on playing with some of that while also using it for off-grid texting. So right now I've been setting up a number of ranches. Some of these are like 300-acre ranches that are in my neighborhood, and we're connecting them all with the nodes so that we can communicate just as neighbors to say like, hey, how are things going with the winter storm? Are you guys okay on water? Or, do you guys still have electricity? We're without internet. How are you guys doing? Like just the stuff you might do during not a full-on emergency, but just being neighborly and asking for stuff. Like, I don't know, maybe somebody needs a cup of sugar or some eggs or something. So we're trying to make it as social as possible. That way people will use it more often. So back to building this thing up. So you get your antenna in. You get yourself one of your cool guy 18650. Again, that battery is so ubiquitous and cheap as chips. You're gonna find it inside when you can find it online really affordably. Even cheaper, you're gonna find it in older laptops that have been that are past their use. You just pop open that battery pack and you're gonna strip it out. You're gonna find stuff like I literally have some sitting in the trash can over here. This is out of a power tool. So I decided not to harvest these because some of them looked a little rusty, and I'm not going to mess with trying to harvest some of the other ones. But before something like this becomes e-waste, they're often bad because one cell went south and the other ones are perfectly fine. And there's like a little computer chip microcontroller on here that detects that that's bad and says, no way, I'm not letting the company that made me take the liability of this thing catching on fire. I'm disabling the entire pack. So you can come in here and harvest these cells, just snip them out, charge them up, and you're in business. And I'm hoping that this hobby moves from the arena where it's at now, where people are buying made for the part pieces to put these all together, which is kind of great to see the DIY sort of spirit of this thing, 3D printing other cases and getting those things going. But I think it can be even cheaper if we go into the sort of upcycling, free cycling kind of area where you find just random project batteries that you might have had laying around for other things, an old camera that you're not using anymore, and repurpose this. Grab the charger for it, open it up, solder on some stuff so that the charger acts like a dock where you can offer it up new batteries, and it both charges the battery and runs the little LoRa node. And then as the power goes out, it siphons power from the battery instead of the mains electricity. So there's some cool things that we can be doing with this and getting our parts for basically free. If you just kind of look around, if you're into DIY stuff, you're going to have these things around you. So it's going to be an exciting time for sure. So battery snap goes in, then you're going to take the often provided power cord that comes from Heltec. And you can do one of two things here. You can either, man, they're so helpful. These are both spliced. So as long as you're okay with some really long cable management, having to like zigzag and like wad it up in here, like left, right, until it's all in there, it's still doable. Both these sides are tinned, and you can come in and just, get yourself like those little hand helpers or whatever with the alligator clips. Hold those there, tack them with some solder, run some heat shrink over that you would have put on before you soldered it, obviously, or electrical tape. I don't know, like just kind of get it done. And or the second thing you have as an option is to take one of these and snip off where the wire goes into, like on this side it's like a little rivet that got pinched, so you can cut it off right there, this thicker gauge wire. And if you come in, you can solder right to the little eyelets. Now you got to get in and out, use flux. Flux is your friend. You got like 2 seconds, 1,000, 2,000, and you're out, because you're going to start melting this plastic really fast. But you can tack, of course you would want to do the red one. You can tack that guy right there and then cut off the original one. And then now you've got a battery snap that has just that shorter length from Heltec. And that's probably what I would do. So then you got that in, you got your battery snapped in, glued in place. You got your SMA connector sticking through. Next, you would lay in the board. It's gonna be a little finicky, so be patient with them. You want to put it right on, make sure it's lined up, and then press straight down. So you want to avoid letting this antenna connector here make any 90-degree turns. You don't want it to pinch to go underneath it or anything like that. It needs to have flowing lines to let all those pixies that are dancing along it have a smooth ride. If they've got to stop and turn 90 degrees, you can be in some hurt there, all right? You'd plug in your power. Of course, I'm not set up to do that right now, but you plug in your little power lead like that, tuck it all inside there, and then drop this guy in. I need to do the USB side first. Get it in there. There you go. It snaps right in place. Did a great job on these things. All right, now I don't know why so many people online refuse to take off the protective cover for their LCD screen, but it's going to look better in the sunlight. Oh, almost premature there. Nice. Now sometimes I'll set these aside if these are going to go to someone else, and after I get it all assembled, I'll put it back on there to do what it does. It protects the thing. As is, you could use it like this, but we want to keep some stuff covered up. So Chris gives us a couple options. One of those is just a regular faceplate with living hinge buttons on the side here. This one I printed and then painted. I didn't like I was trying to go with some black on white. Not just gray on white. And the other option you get is with a switch that fits perfectly. I already had a bunch of those laying around from modifying GameCubes. So I picked a pretty industry standard little tiny switch, which is awesome. So that thing just snaps right in place. When I'm confident that this is the configuration I have, I'll probably put a little dab of hot glue or something in some of the corners up on the edges, but away from the screen because I don't need it accidentally oozing out onto the screen there. And then you get a back plate here. This one I tried to like paint in on his logo. I thought that kind of looked kind of cool, and then it bled into the lower layers, but I think it looks kind of nifty that way. So put your snap on. Before we do that, we probably want to put a battery in here. Oh, and before I power it up, I need to I need to take my own advice and make sure I've got an antenna connected here. Now, the other thing, I've got this thing, you guys saw this thing sitting on the bench here. I wanted to show you that the stock antennas, a lot of them that you're getting on right now, these little stubby ones, which I like stubby antennas. But of course, we're going for long range here, hence the name LoRa. We're going for long range, so these might not be best, but for messing around here in the shop and in the house, they're short antennas would be perfectly fine. So I bought these, just like a lot of folks have been doing, on Amazon. I will not be giving you the link to these because all the ones that I bought that are the short ones, they're all off frequency. So here's one that's resonant at about 800 megahertz, 795. Where we're supposed to be is over here at 915. So I think it's like 908 to 930. So they kind of just split it right down the middle as far as antennas tuning goes. And that's 915, way over here. So these things are way out of whack versus a higher quality, probably has some decent quality control also. I will put a link to these longer ones, because look at that, dead nuts on 915. It drops, and it drops hard down to like 1.1 for an SWR, and it might even be better. Oh yeah, look, it gets even better if you hold it upright. And I've got a lot of RFI that's 1.0, guys, right there. I got a lot of radio interference in the shop right now, so take that for what it's worth. But just look at that. That's awesome. These things are great. So this is the one that's going to go on this guy. And because it's a bigger antenna, I needed a little bit of a base to have this thing not go flopping around on me. And so that's why I was motivated to 3D print something. And I love that it's canted up. This idea that it's going to be like on your desk and you're going to want to look at it. If it's completely flat like this, you're constantly going to be like lifting it up to look at it. And so Chris knew that and gave you that cool guy cant, so the screen's faced right at you. I took a page out of iOS UI UX design, and I painted behind the switch so that once I put the switch in place, at a glance, I'll be able to see green is on and red is off. So I won't be guessing like which way did I, because you can do it either way. It's a switch, so it can either be on and off or off and on. It's a user preference. But I would have for sure forgotten what I soldered when I put this thing all together, and so I went ahead and painted the switch there. All right, in taking my own advice, here's a battery that I harvested from a laptop. At some point tested. Had 1500 milliamps, not bad. Then I'm gonna go with gray. All right, so that snaps on the back there, and you're off to the races. So it's giving me instructions to set the region, because this can be used in different countries, and different countries have different ISM bands or their version of ISM. So I'll do that off screen. But I wanted to give you guys a sneak peek at some of the projects that are coming up. I'm planning on doing some long range testing. I've got some big mamma jammas like this guy. I mean, this is ridiculously tiny, and so there's a lot of cool places that we can hide something like that. And then the plan is to come in with the solar panel and see how long we can keep something like this alive with the battery pack that it has. It is definitely an exciting time to be alive, to be able to use this technology and stand on the shoulders of giants that have come behind and like developed different technologies, and to be able to make an amalgamation of those things and come up with something new, like a meshed network for off-grid communications that are encrypted. And all I had to do is point and click on some stuff online, and it comes to my door next day. Like, it would be difficult to explain how awesome right now is to somebody that was maybe alive in the 80s or something like that, or the early 90s. Truly amazing time. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If so, take a look at some of the links down in the description so that you can play along at home, and make sure you're subscribed to Julian's Random Projects.
I'm hanging in, there ain't no doubt, and I'm hanging tough. Over and out, over and out, over